Okay, so I'm Roger Hallam. I help coordinate various activities at the London office. I'm doing this quick video on how to do facilitation. So the first thing to say is this video is basically a good enough quick guide, right? Because so much facilitation is just really bad, and it could be made really a lot better if people know a few basic skills, okay? So once you've done this, sort of watch this video and you've done some practicing and stuff, then obviously you can learn more sophisticated stuff. But we've got a rebellion on April 15th, and we're looking at getting enough people trained up in basic skills. So this training was done in an organisation called Radical Roots, which was setting up housing co-ops and workers co-ops, and it was done several hundred times, and it's like quick hit sort of training. And if you're watching this and you want to train other people, then you can use the same basic structure. There's 4 or 5 basic skills that get you through a meeting with everyone not being pissed off because it's really chaotic. So I'm going to go through it one stage at a time. So the first thing is organising the space, right? So the space is really crappy. However good you are, it's going to be like not a very good meeting. So what does that mean? So first of all, make sure it starts on time. Okay, so people are 10 minutes late, 15 minutes late, that's okay. But you want to definitely start like more or less on time, within a quarter of an hour. Second thing is you want to finish on time. So you can do that by telling people when it will be finished, and obviously having an agenda and making sure you get through that agenda, okay? So in terms of the room itself, it wants to be light and warm and most essentially quiet. If it's not quiet, people can't hear each other and it just goes a bit downhill. Okay, and obviously with most sort of meetings start off with a bit of a go round and what have you, so that's fine. Okay, I'm just trying to think whether there's something else
About the room.
about the room
About
and
space.
the space. Yes, sorry. The other thing is that you want to arrange the seats in a circle. So obviously I'm covering a multitude of sins. There's lots of different sorts of meetings, so not everything applies to everything. But you definitely want people to be close to each other so they can hear each other. Again, if people can't hear each other, the whole thing starts breaking down. You want to be in a circle because then everyone can see each other and it gives that sort of participatory feel to it. Okay, so you've got all that sort of organised, you've got the agenda, you've got the room, you've got the chairs sorted out, you've got it starting on time. Oh yeah, and another thing is, obviously, this depends on what sort of meeting it is. Good idea to have some water and some biscuits and stuff so people can have a little munch on stuff while they're talking. Makes it more sociable. All right, so next thing, the most important way to have a successful meeting is to set some ground rules at the beginning of the meeting. It's really straightforward, and it usually reduces sort of really bad problems by about 80% for the sake of argument. So what does that mean? That means, like, you say what the purpose of the meeting is, and then you say there's certain ways we're going to treat people in the meeting. So in Extinction Rebellion, as people probably know, there's a little bit of a regen readout, which has been very effective because we say straight away there's no calling out. People aren't like saying insulting things or aggressive things to people in the meeting. And secondly, if you do have a problem, then you can sort that out outside the meeting, face-to-face, on a phone call or conflict resolution or what have you. And then you say, don't take on things you're not going to do, which is another sort of like fundamental. But I would add to that something about the purpose of the organisation. So we gathered here today in order to bring about a rebellion on the 15th. So it sort of sets the scene. And this particular meeting is to organise leafleting in London. Do you see what I mean? So people broadly know what's going on. And then the other thing I would add would why it's important. So I would also add this is if it's a sort of new meeting with new people, a lot of people aren't that disciplined, as it were, I'd say. What we are about in this meeting is enabling everyone to speak, because everyone's equally important. Okay, so you give a moral reason, you give the behaviour, and then you give the moral reason for that behaviour. And the behaviour has to be a specific practice. Like, so you say, we're going to give each other time to speak. Put your hand up if you want to speak. Don't talk over people. The reason for this is because we want to respect each other, and I'm sure we all agree with that. If people talk too much, I will be asking people to stop speaking so that other people can talk, so that we can all communicate what we think is important. Okay, so that sets the scene, right? Because one of the biggest problems in meetings is twofold. Some people don't speak and other people speak too much. Okay, so if you set the scene, it makes it a lot easier, as we'll see in a minute, to actually get people to follow those rules. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you might want to, if you're doing a workshop on this, it's a good idea to get people to role play this. So people role play standing up and doing a 2-minute introduction to a meeting, and then people give feedback. If you're in quite a big group, then you do it in pairs. So one person stands up, or says to the other person, "Thank you for coming to the meeting. This is how it's organised." Dum bum bum, and then the other person does it. So you can do that for about 5 minutes. So the whole of this workshop, if you want to run the workshop, is based upon role playing. You give the idea and what to say, and then people repeat that in a particular, repeat it. Okay, so that's the first sort of skill, making sure you sort of create the state of play. So the second thing is about participation. So as I just said, there's 2 elements to participation. There's asking people to speak, and then there's asking people not to speak. Okay, so the best way we'll do like asking people not to speak. And if you've been in lots of meetings, I'm sure everyone who's watching this video, you've been in meetings and someone's rambling on, right? They've probably got, they're probably all well-meaning and what have you, but it's just getting boring, or you want to go, because most meetings just get boring and just go on and on. So as a facilitator, it's your key role to basically shut someone up. Okay, so how do you do that? Right, it's really basic behavioural sort of method. First of all, you say their name, okay, and then you say thank them for what they've said, okay, and then you mention the rule to them. And then without asking their permission, then you go and ask someone else to speak. Okay, so it goes something like this. Joe, what you're saying is really important there. It is important that we get 2 people to the demonstration by 7 o'clock to organise the PA. At the same time, we need to hear from other people on this subject. So I'm going to now ask Jane, would you like to contribute or say what you think, or would someone else like to say what they think about this issue? Okay, so just go through that again. Their name, thank them for the contribution, summarise what that contribution is so they've heard it, and then without sort of asking whether they think that's okay or not, just go straight on to asking other people. Now if they say something like, yes, but I've got something important to say, then again, use this sort of counselling mechanism where you summarise what they say, you thank them, you validate it, and then you mention the rule. So it goes for something like, you say their name again, you say something like, Jack, that's right, what you're saying is really important. It is important we get 2 people down to demonstration with PA. We've all heard that. And as I said at the beginning of the meeting, we're here today to hear lots of people's views, because it's important, everyone's able to contribute. So thanks for your contribution, that's brilliant. And now I want to ask Jane, who's also got experience in this area, Jane, what would you like to talk about? So 9 times out of 10, that'll do the job. Obviously, every rule that I'm giving you here is not like airtight. You're always going to get some psychopathic person who just won't shut up. But 99% of the time, this sort of thing works in conjunction with you setting the ground rule at the beginning of the meeting. Do you see what I mean? So most people, once you've set the ground rule, they'll behave themselves, And if they don't, it's usually because they've forgotten the rule. If you remind them of the rule, then they'll usually go, oh, right, yeah, okay, fair enough. Do you see what I mean? It's important to do that because if you're aggressive, then they tend to be aggressive back because you've damaged their ego, if you see what I mean. So we're all like that, you know what I mean? No one likes to be told to shut up. What people like to know is they've been heard. So you've said they've been heard and you communicate they've been heard by summarising it. Okay, so the other side of the equation, as I'm sure you're all aware, you've got the problem of someone talking too much in a meeting. And then if a meeting isn't properly facilitated, I would estimate in most meetings, 50% of people will hardly talk at all. You usually get 20% of people talking 80% of the time. Okay, so that's not good because you've got all this knowledge and these opinions and these emotions that need to be communicated, and a lot of people won't. And the reason they won't is because they're either shy or pissed off, or they get into a bit of a habit at the beginning of the meeting not talking. And I think we've all been in meetings where if you don't talk for a while, you'll sort of lose the knack, if you see what I mean. So fairly early on, it's really essential in your responsibility as a facilitator to get the people who haven't spoken to speak, because what's the point of being in the meeting if you don't speak? You know, you might as well not be there. Okay, so how do you do that? Okay, the first thing is don't ask people whether they've got something to say. It's like demeaning. Everyone's got something to say. We're all social beings. If you're not saying something, it's because you're not speaking your truth, not because you haven't got one. Do you see what I mean? So the general rule of thumb, again, is to use their name and then ask them if they'd like to contribute their opinion. So it goes something like this. Okay, Jane, we're talking about getting people to sort out the PA on the demonstration. Could you say what you think about that issue? In other words, ask them what they're already saying. Now, often, if they're shy or pissed off, they're going to push back a little bit. So they're going to say, like, no, I haven't really got anything to say on that. That's bollocks, right? Everyone's always got things to say. What they're really saying is, as I said, they're either shy or they're pissed off. So the way you draw them out is to summarise what they've just said. So let's say Jane says, yeah, I haven't really got anything to say. And then you say, okay, so there's nothing you really want to contribute on this subject. You know, your thoughts, you don't want to talk about your thoughts on this PA system. And they'll say something like, no, I just think it's not working. This plan we've got is not working. So in other words, they've said the real reason why they're not talking is they think the idea is rubbish, right? Which is great because then you've drawn them out, and then you just summarise it again and say something. Okay, so what you're saying is this plan for the PA isn't working, right? And you just summarise that. By summarising it, you'll draw them out. You don't need to then say, can you contribute what you think? They'll naturally, they'll naturally come out with why they're pissed off. So they say, yeah, I don't think this plan's working because, one, the PA isn't good enough, and secondly, it's really heavy, and we're just not going to be able to get it to the demo. And then you say something like, so you think there's a lot of problems here, and there needs to be another solution. So you're drawing them into a solution mode then, and they say, yeah, what we should be doing is paying this company that specialises in this to come down, and then they're off and away. Do you see what I mean? So again, I've given you a little bit of a tricky example there. Most people, obviously, if it's a really fairly cool sort of meeting, people will say what they want just by prompting them, if you see what I mean. And obviously, ultimately, if they're not going to say something, they're not going to say something. This is not an absolute guarantee. Just as every now and again, you're going to get some person, usually a guy, of course, who's just going to keep going and going. But 95% of the time, that does the trick. Okay, and that creates a lot fuller meeting because I'm sure everyone knows the best meetings is when you've got everyone contributing. Because everyone's got something to say. Okay, so that's the moral sort of basis of facilitation, as you know what I mean. The value we have in Extinction Rebellion and in all progressive movements is this value of participation. Everyone's equal, everyone deserves equal respect, and it's your responsibility not just to keep stack, right? Or just keep a list. So this is the most fundamental error people make about facilitation, is say, oh, I'll facilitate, and you just keep a list of who's going to speak, right? No, no, no. That is not facilitation. That is just keeping stacked. That's keeping a list. Now, if you're in a big meeting, someone else can do that because it's quite a complicated job. Your role as facilitator is to enable participation, number one, and number two, enable the group to come to the optimum decision that it's capable of in the shortest amount of time, because people want to go home, right? Participation is all about having quick meetings, because if you have long meetings, people get pissed off and then they're going to leave. If they leave, they're not participating. Okay, so that brings us on to step two, right? Which is the main sort of most tricky sort of element. Oh, just to go back a bit, sorry. So what you want to do, if you're training people in this, you can just use those little examples. There's two there, and then on each one you can split people up. So again, you can do this as a whole group. It's quite fun. So you say someone who's like rambling on and someone's that's going to shut them up. And you can do it, and you can, obviously the rambling on person can be quite awkward, so it's quite funny. And you can see, and then you do it say 2 times, or you can do it in pairs if there's a lot of people. And people can sort of see and then comment on it. And then you do it again for drawing people out. So, one person's the facilitator, someone pretends to be really shy or pissed off. Yeah? So this workshop is a lot of fun. because everyone knows, if you've been in enough meetings, you know these routines like the back of your hand. You know when there's someone rambling on, when someone's not talking. So it's really great and empowering to sort of learn how to sort this sort of situation out. Okay, so then you go on to getting agreement, right? I mean, obviously getting agreement is, you can make up scenarios which are totally like horrendous and you're just not going to get agreement. But most of the time, the problem with getting to agreement is mainly a problem of facilitation, correct facilitation, i.e. people can't make decisions because no one's actually guiding them. Okay, so again, this is the biggest mistake with most facilitators. They say, oh, this is the agenda item. We've got to decide how to get the PA to the demonstration, right? And they just sit there blankly while everyone goes round in circles, right? So that's disastrous, right? It's just going to piss people off, and then all the people that aren't really manic are just going to leave the space, are going to come to the next meeting. So again, you've got that responsibility to facilitate increased participation through efficient decision making. Okay, so what does efficient decision making or effective decision making look like? Okay, so the first skill is to summarize agreement and get it down. The biggest problem is people make agreements. One of the biggest problems is people you can sense the meeting has made an agreement and then they carry on discussing it. It's just going like, we've agreed that already. So it's a bit, what you're trying to do is to get people to focus on a particular thing at one time. Okay, and of course, obviously people putting their hand up. So it goes something like this. Someone says, okay, so, I think we should have the PA from this company and not like go to Fred's mate, right? And everyone says, yeah, that's a good idea because Fred's mate's not reliable and this company, well, they seem to know what they're doing and it's not too expensive. Okay, jump in there and say, okay, everyone, what I'm hearing is like that we don't want to go to Fred's mate because he's not reliable and we are going to go to this company, right? I think that's what we've decided. Ask everyone. If that's what we've decided, let's get it minuted, okay? That Jack is now action pointed to go to the company, okay? So you get it down, and once you've got it down in the minutes, then everyone goes, right, we've bagged that one. We don't need to talk about why the company's great, and Jack's mate, or whoever it is, Fred's mate, I've forgotten, Fred's mate is sort of like not that great, okay? So that's summarizing agreement. So often you have like a subject like organizing the PAs for the demo, which is actually split into various different elements because, okay, you're going to go to the company to get the PA, but then you've got to decide how you're going to get it from the company to the demonstration. Do you see what I mean? So often people discuss lots of minor elements of it all at the same time. Which is really inefficient. You want to step in and go, what we're talking about now is how are you going to get the PA? okay? And if someone says, yeah, but it's a real problem, how are we going to get it, from the company to the demo? You say, that's a really important issue, and we're going to deal with that in a minute. But at the moment, we're going to talk about how we're going to get it, okay? Because if you don't get it, we're not going to be able to bring it anywhere. Do you see what I mean? So then go for, oh yeah. So then you summarize the agreement, and then you summarize the remaining disagreement or what has not yet been decided, okay? So you say something like this: okay, everyone, we've decided to go to this company to get the PA, and what we have to decide now is how we're going to get it from the company to the demo. What does everyone think about that? And then you can, say, Jane, what do you think about that? Someone who hasn't spoken or something. And then everyone will go around the circle and they'll go, okay, so, maybe we bring in a bike because we want to be ecological. Or someone says, yeah, but they're like, it's really long way. And someone says, okay, I've got a car. Then someone says, yeah, but, it's not going to fit in a car because it's really big. Okay, we're going to have to hire a van. Okay, we want to get an electric van, but that's like too difficult. You see what I mean? So you've got this discussion and, and what you want to do is maybe like summarize where you keep wanting to interjecting, saying, okay, we've decided the bike option doesn't work, okay? Right, summarize what off. So what we have got to decide is between hiring a car or hiring a van, let's say. And then people go, okay, they've decided hiring a van, and they say, great. So what I'm hearing from everyone is, we're going to have a van, and we're going to pick it up at 10 o'clock, and Fred's going to do it, and let's get that minuted. Okay, next thing on the agenda. Do you see what I mean? So with those two skills, like summarising agreement and summarising disagreement, then again, those are two role plays. So the role play here is to have three people who are deliberately like crap, as you might say, and then you've got a facilitator who's intervening, going, okay, we're not talking about that, even though it's important. What we're talking about is this, and the agreement we've made is that. Let's get it written down and move on to the next thing, okay? So the name of the game is, if in doubt, intervene, right? People like that because people need to be guided, okay, in terms of making a decision. So as I said, most of the time, the problem with decisions is not because of people's egos. It's not like, I think this and, a matter of principle. Most meetings aren't a matter of principle. They're a matter of effective management, if you see the discussion. No one's really that bothered. It's not whether, it's Fred's mate or the company, right? Just need to work out what's best. And they'll be helped by the facilitation. Okay, so that's like the next skill set. So the last skill set, as it were, is dealing with blocks or disagreements, right? So one of the main reasons people leave movements and leave meetings and exit spaces is because things just go on too long. It gets boring and or unpleasant, right? So we've all been in meetings where something just goes over and over again, right? So as a facilitator, it's your moral responsibility, as it were, in terms of the values of XR or progressive movements or whatever, to enable constructive outcomes to fundamental disagreements. So obviously fundamental disagreements covers a multitude of things. Like 90% of the time, fundamental disagreements aren't actually that fundamental. I mean, often, sometimes they are, in which case, obviously, you're back to some guy who's talking all the time. You've always got that possibility. But 9 times out of 10, it's more a management problem in the sense of how to facilitate getting to a good enough agreement, if you see what I mean. So there's 2 or 3 things you can do. The first thing is, if you think it's going around in circles, and there's 2 people going like this, which often is the case, right? Everyone else isn't really bothered, but there's 2 people going boom, boom, boom. You say, okay, so there's a number of options here. Joe and Fred have a disagreement about this. So what I suggest is we leave it and people go off and get some more information, and we talk about it next week, okay? Now, the reason for that is not so much because you need to get more information, but it enables everyone to sleep on it, right? Because once you've slept on it, you wake up the following morning really not that bothered. Because as soon as people get into that emotional mode of aggression in a meeting, they're not going to agree, even if they were feeling, there's a bit of the brain, sort of fight or flight bit, and then you're never going to get agreement because the egos are involved. Do you see what I mean? So the good thing is to carry it over to the following meeting, and as a facilitator or something, you can talk to those two people and try and get something sorted out. Another variation on the theme is often you've got a disagreement, but it's not a disagreement over something that important. Do you see what I mean? So, for instance, you might say, okay, we've agreed that Joe and Fred are going to bring the speakers to the demo, right? And then Joe's going, right, we need to take it on the bus, and the other guy's going, oh no, we need to go on the train, right? This is boring, right? So you just say to them, look, we've agreed the fundamental thing. We're going to get the demo. They're going to get the speakers from the company. Joe and Fred, you are now delegated to go and sort out the nitty-gritty of it. Do you see what I mean? So then you get that out of the meeting, and they can have a big argument down the pub if they're obsessed with different travel routes. Like whatever. So if it's a little bit more serious, the other thing you can do is say, okay, so we've sort of agreed this, or we sort of haven't, and it feels quite like fractious. So why don't the two protagonists, or 3 or 4 people, go away, have a subgroup meeting before next week and discuss it? So one thing is they can discuss it. The second thing is they can do more research. The third thing is they can get feedback from other people. And 9 times out of 10, once those people get together in a small group, if you get a group of 3 people, they're usually quite polite with each other and they'll come to an agreement because the dynamics change. If you're in a big group, people tend to get more ego-y because there's people looking at them and they want to save face. Do you see what I mean? So if you get people in a three people, in a pub something, they'll sort it out. And the following 9 times out of 10, they'll come to the meeting, the following meeting, and go, yeah, we've decided this. And most of the people aren't that bothered anyway. So cool. Do you see what I mean? So the other thing to say is you could continue talking about it, of course, which on balance I always try to avoid, because it's usually because people are being undisciplined, because what it will mean is something will drop off the agenda. So I would always err on the side of getting people to just talk about it out of the meeting, because it's quite unjust, without being too dramatic, that the people who put the last items on the agenda get pushed off because someone's ego enough to want to push their point of view on a particular agenda item. So it's a good thing to say, okay, Joe, your point of view is really important here, but what I suggest you do is get together with Jack and Frida and go down a pub and sort that out, because Rupert has got this agenda item which he thinks is really important, and we're not going to be able to discuss it, and it's really important that everyone gets their agenda items talked about. Do you see what I mean? So, but if people do want to continue talking about it, obviously the group can do that, and maybe you'll come to an agreement, but 9 times out of 10 it's best to get it out. So that's the last skill, as you might say, which is, again, you can role play that. You have 2 people going bang bang bang, having a disagreement, and then you role play going, okay, could you discuss this outside the meeting, go and get feedback, go and get some information. And they go, oh yeah, okay then, let's go on with that. So that's the end of this little training. And in my experience, having done hundreds of these workshops, because I used to do this all the time for Radical Roots, is you can just move people from being quite shy and unconfident to a good enough facilitator in about an hour and a half. And obviously you can spend the next 20 years becoming super duper, spiritually enlightened facilitators, right? That's all cool. There's loads, if things are really fractious or something, but this training is mainly geared to those 2 sorts of meetings, where there's new people coming together, but everyone's pretty reasonable, and meetings, sort of business meetings when you want to get things done. And 80% of meetings are like that, do you know what I mean? So the main thing I would advise people to do, they're watching this video, is to write down what I've said and then go and do a training with their group and get people sort of certified, as it were. Everyone does this training that facilitates. And my prediction is everything will start flowing a lot better. Thank you.